Agroforestry is one of the most important practices we need to adopt if we want to make our food system more resilient. But what actually is agroforestry? The way that we grow food right now is broken. We all know about pesticides in our food and the decreasing nutrient and mineral quantities of our fruits and vegetables, but many people are not aware of what's coming. Things are honestly way more precarious, and our food system is a lot more fragile than I think most people realize. Conventional agriculture is not ready for the next century, and honestly, this should scare you. But there's actually a lot of solutions. In this video, I'm going to talk about a very promising solution that's actually older than farming itself. It's been getting a lot of attention recently, but big corporations still don't want to use it. It grows healthier food, and it does so without fertilizers or pesticides. So get comfy and let's learn exactly what agroforestry is and why it just might be one of the most important solutions we have to fix our food system.
I want to tell you a story about water, or rather a lack of water. The story begins in Italy at Quintosapore, a regenerative farm started by two brothers who want to change the world. Alessandro and Nico are passionate seed savers, keeping old varieties alive. They single-handedly saved the lost Malmaturo grape from extinction by ignoring the advice of conventional farmers. They pay their workers well, they feed their local community, and they host events that bring people together. They aren't afraid to try new things and share what they learn with others, and the farm is a haven for biodiversity and a striking example of how things could be.
But all of this is at risk.
I'm Alessandro Giugioli, the owner of Quintosapore.
Last year, they had a 6-month drought, and things are getting hotter and drier here.
And basically it doesn't rain anymore. In the summer it doesn't rain at all. So what happens if you don't have water anymore?
What happens then?
We die. I think there is going to be a solution, and it's basically you have to find the solution in nature.
So are you worried here for yourselves?
We are planting trees. We have to plant more.
The droughts are increasing in severity and frequency at a rate that alarms Alessandro.
I think we have no time. That's the only problem. We have no time. I mean, we need to have a farm completely covered in 5 years. Basically covering the farm with trees, like a wildland.
So for Alessandro, the plan is clear. Plant trees or close the farm. But how do we combine trees with farming?
Agroforestry is just farming combined with trees. Agroforestry. But what's so cool about that? I'll explain how it works, but I'm kind of hot right now. Let's go to the shade. Whew, that's better. It's nice and cool and moist in here in the dappled shade of these trees. And that brings me to one of agroforestry's main benefits, which is water retention. This entire area, because it's shaded, has a higher moisture content in the air. And that also means a higher moisture content in the soil. So as soon as you integrate trees into your farming, you need to water less.
So that's cool, but how do we actually do agroforestry?
Well, on a conventional farm, you just get to plant one thing, like corn. But what if we remove some of this corn and planted a chestnut instead? And then maybe beside that, we plant an apple. And now suddenly we can grow some grapes up the trunks of these trees, and maybe we plant some blueberries underneath here. And then maybe on this side, we can plant a nitrogen fixing tree like an alder, so it's literally growing free fertilizer for us. And let's remove a row of corn and replace it with beans that also fix nitrogen, and edible nasturtiums, which help deter pests and are delicious. So now we're getting less corn, yeah, but we're actually getting more overall food out of the same space and using less fertilizers and pesticides to grow that. Okay, let me break it down. We're told that conventional agriculture is the most efficient system and it can produce the most calories per acre. So let's think about it and see if that's true. The first thing you need to understand is that a calorie is actually just a unit of energy. I never really thought about that, but calorie is just energy, like a watt or a joule. Okay, so conventional agriculture, the industrial model, outputs a lot of calories per acre. That's true, but, and this is the key part, it only achieves that kind of output with a tremendous caloric input into the system. In fact, and this is absolutely insane, industrial agriculture takes 10 calories of energy to produce 1 calorie of food. What's worse is that industrial agriculture also produces a ton of negative externalities. So saying that industrial agriculture is efficient is actually extremely misleading. It's actually an extremely inefficient use of energy, and it produces a ton of problems in the world that you and I are going to have to pay for, while the companies that cause them get to reap huge profits. But agroforestry systems, they produce more output calories than they need as inputs. As trees in an agroforestry system mature, they require less and less inputs, and they produce more food every year as they keep getting older. So if you factor in the input calories, which you definitely should do if you want to paint an accurate picture, then agroforestry is actually more efficient than industrial agriculture. So why isn't agroforestry the norm? Well, simply put, it's because investors don't want farmers to grow food. Investors don't want farmers to grow food. Investors want farmers to grow commodities. Big agribusiness want predictable, dependable commodities they can trade on global markets.
The investors who own our farms want endless fields of the same crop that are easy to harvest, easy to transport, and easy to sell.
The 4 companies that own 60% of the global seed supply are pretty happy with how things are working. It doesn't matter that the nutrition of our crops is decreasing steadily, the amount of fertilizers and pesticides are increasing steadily, and that we're all literally being poisoned by the food that is supposed to nourish us. They don't care.
So that's why it's up to small farms to lead the way. Agroforestry won't come from the top. So that's why I traveled to Ibiza to meet Finn and see how he's dealing with water at his farm.
Hey, my name is Finn. I'm the co-founder and chief designer of Juntos farm.
And are you using any agroforestry here at Juntos?
Never heard of it. Agroforestry is one of the strategies we're using here in the market garden. We've interplanted all of the rows of herbs with fig trees, and then we have rows of fruit and nut trees as well, which when they get nice and big will provide shading for the garden in the hottest months. It's a way of growing a high level of diversity while sequestering a huge amount of carbon, and again mimicking what we find in natural ecosystems. A lot of people think it's not possible because we're not familiar with these types of ecosystems in Mediterranean regions, for example, but we're finding it increasingly successful where it's being put into practice.
Do you have concerns at Juntos about water?
Yes. Water is one of the major threats for Juntos. We're on an island that faces a drought every year and also has a huge demand in the summer from the amount of tourists that visit the island.
So what would happen to your farm and your business if you ran out of water?
If we run out of water, then this farm will not survive. But we're facing a future that is going to be increasingly threatened by drought. And so we should be planning for that now. I think this is a big piece when it comes to farming today. We need to be designing systems that are responding to the changes that we know are already locked in.
Cool. Thank you. Okay, so we've seen how some farmers are implementing agroforestry as a way to mitigate drought, and I showed you a basic way of how we could replace a cornfield with an agroforestry system, but let's get a little bit more specific now, and I'll show you the 3 main ways that agroforestry is actually practiced. Polycropping is when you have rows of perennials with rows of annuals in between. There's so many different ways to do this, but one classic example that Mark Shepard has in his book, Restoration Agriculture. And so how this one works is basically you plant rows of walnuts, but those take a long time to produce. So in the meantime, you've got asparagus down the middle, and you can do that every year until your walnuts start producing. And then suddenly you're still getting asparagus, and now you're also getting walnuts. But over time they're getting bigger and they start shading things out. So the system is changing over time. So just in the same way that you're growing upwards, you're adding a dimension to your farming. Instead of a cornfield being flat, you're adding a layer up because now you're growing trees, now you're growing things up the trees, you can grow vines, you can grow smaller trees. You're adding a vertical dimension to your system. In the same way that you're adding a vertical dimension to your system, you're also adding a temporal dimension because your system is changing every single year. Unlike a conventional farm where you just plant corn and forget it, every single year, an agroforestry system is going to be slightly different because in the first year, you don't have any walnuts. You're basically just doing an annual farm. But in the 10th year or the 15th year, suddenly your walnuts are actually starting to produce a substantial amount of shade. And so the system is starting to change and become more perennial focused. But you're always getting multiple yields out of the system. That's what's so cool. So alley cropping is a fantastic system, but what if you want to integrate animals into it? That's called silvopasture. Silvo
silvopasture. Silvopasture is when you integrate animals and trees. So any system where you combine trees with animals. There's a ton of benefits to combining these two things. So let's say, for example, that you've got an apple orchard. Instead of just having an apple orchard, what if we ran our chickens underneath those apples? Well, suddenly the chickens are going to be eating all the old fruit that falls, and they're going to be eating bugs and pests. So you're going to actually reduce your pest pressure that you have on your apple tree. You're also going to be fertilizing those apple trees because the chicken poop is extremely high in nitrogen. And you're going to need to feed your chickens less because the chickens get to eat the apples that fall. And you're also going to be providing shade and predator protection to the chickens. So it's like a symbiotic system that just makes everything work better when you combine animals and trees. Okay, that's cool, but what if we want to do even more? Well, then we can plant a food forest. Food forests or forest gardens are basically just mimicking how nature grows. Nature doesn't grow straight rows. Nature doesn't grow one thing. Nature grows forests. Every single ecosystem that has enough water and doesn't get damaged in some way is trying to become a forest. Think about that. So to understand that, you need to understand succession. A grass field is trying to become a forest. At first, you get dandelions. Then you start getting weeds that have woody stems, and that starts bringing in more fungus to eat those. And over time, you're building more and more towards a forest, and eventually you're gonna get an old growth forest. That's just how succession works. And so once you learn about that, trying to grow annuals the way we do, like just corn or wheat or whatever, is actually working against nature. Every single year, you're having to reset the succession and start earlier down. So instead of doing that, what if we just embraced what nature wanted to do and we mimicked how nature grew things? By mimicking how nature grows things, we plant in what's called a food forest. Food forests are insanely cool, but honestly, that's a whole nother video. Comment down below if you want to learn more about that and I can make videos about it. All right, enough talking. Let's go check out a real agroforestry system.
Okay, so this is Quintosapore. This is the regenerative farm I was telling you about before, and Alessandro was the one who was worried about water. So he's actually started planting trees already. Let me show you how their agroforestry system works. Okay, remember the three main types of agroforestry that I just told you about? Take a look at this and see if you can guess which one it is. Need some help? What if I show you this? This is an alley cropping system. They've got rows of perennial olive trees, but in the middle, they're growing annuals. Here they've got tomatoes and eggplants. This increases biodiversity and supports the local ecosystem, which in turn increases the resiliency and pest resistance of all the crops. This creates a positive feedback loop because the farmers don't need to spray pesticides or fungicides, which allows more beneficial bacteria and beneficial fungi to colonize and help everything out. This creates less ecological niches for pests and predators to inhabit. And Nico and Ale also plant living pathways in between the rows, and these basically are like a little mini diverse polyculture pasture. And that has so many benefits for the soil and water retention and all that good stuff. But the way they grow annuals is also really unique. They've got this insane minimal till system that blew my mind when I first saw it. If you want a video about that or the living pathways, just drop a comment down below and I'll make it. Okay, so this is cool, but then they took it up a notch. In between these rows of their crops, they added these sunflowers. Except it's not a sunflower. This is one of the fastest growing trees, and they're called empress trees, and there's a lot of benefits to growing them. Nico and Ale chose to grow them here because they fix nitrogen. So they're actually pulling nitrogen out of the air and putting it down into the soil. And the leaves on this tree are huge. Imagine all of this. It's a nitrogen-filled, phosphorus-filled leaf, very nutritious leaf, that's falling down into the soil, and then all the fungi and bacteria that these farmers have let survive are fed this amazing nutrient and mineral-rich biomass, which then gets turned into beautiful soil for the whole area.
But it's got so many more properties which are super cool. So, well, one is the fastest growing tree on the planet. The root structure of the Paulownia is a root that goes deep in search for water, which has two really good things. So one, it doesn't compete for nutrients with our vegetables. The second thing, we don't water them. We never watered these, and look how much they grow. Then the other thing is they lose the leaf in the autumn. So when you need the sun and the warmth on the field, the tree is naked, so you get the sun. But then in the spring and the summer, when you need the shade, it makes these ginormous leaves that creates a lot of shade. So when they fall on the ground, not only they mulch wonderfully, but they also, in due time, the microorganism transform this into NPK for your soil. It's got all these beautiful magic things. And last but not the least, which is actually the most beautiful part of the Paulownia, is that during the spring, they boom with these purple flowers, like a massive bloom of purple flower. Then they bring all the birds, the biodiversity, exactly in the moment when the parasites come out the ground. So you clear the cycle where you bring, you know, the birds that they feed sometimes on the insects when the insects come out. So you actually we have created a natural circle to keep the pests at bay. So it's all magical and it works in many different ways.
Empress trees can also be coppiced. Coppicing is just when you cut them at the base, and you might think, oh, that would kill the tree, but actually it makes these trees stronger.
But it's also great for us because if we need to cut the tree, we're gonna have the new tree in a year, but also we can convert this into biomass.
So you can cut them like every few years, like
whenever you want, really.
Coppicing is cool because you get all of that biomass from the tree that you cut and you can feed that to the soil. And every time you coppice, there's a root shedding action that happens where a lot of the root mass gets dissolved into the soil and that feeds fungi and builds organic matter even further. Look at how tall it is. So much biomass, so much shade, so much carbon pumped down into the soil. This is agroforestry at work right here. Sorry to interrupt, but I'm Seb. I love growing food. I love soil, and I'm super passionate about making videos, but this is my first long form video I've ever made. So I would love to hear from you in the comments. What can I do to improve? What have you enjoyed about this? And do you want me to keep making videos? Let me know. And if you think I should, please subscribe. I am just starting out, so every single one of you that subscribes is a huge blessing to me. And that's all. Let's get back to the video. Thanks a lot. As I was editing this video, I realized there was actually a great example of agroforestry happening right in front of me. I'm staying at my friend Owen's beautiful seed farm, Annapolis Seeds. He grows an absolutely insane amount of seeds, and this property is a fantastic example of how we localize and strengthen our community resiliency. But we're here in one of the worst droughts this area has seen in a long time, and this farm is suffering. We've been running a sprinkler non-stop, but plants like this are still suffering, and many of them might not make it. The owner, Owen, has been watering as much as he can, but we're worried that the well might run dry, and he's having to pick and choose which plants get to survive and which don't. And the story is the same everywhere we go. Plants stunted by lack of water, dry soil, it's not holding it. These plants are just being cooked in the sun. These fruits are literally falling off of these tomatoes as they're drying up and dying. But there's one place where this isn't happening. Right here in this field, crops are dying, but 20 feet away, these fruit and nut trees are flourishing. These trees have not been watered, and even during the drought, they are loaded, absolutely loaded with fruit. How do we explain that? Simple. It's because perennials are more resilient than annuals. As intense weather events continue to increase, we really need to be thinking about how we can make things more resilient. And agroforestry just might be the answer. But agroforestry is not a new invention. It's actually been practiced for tens of thousands of years by indigenous cultures all over the world. When European settlers came to North America, they thought it was all wild, but it was actually an actively managed agroforestry system taken care of by many indigenous people who had a deep understanding of the land. But because they didn't see nice straight little rows, the Europeans thought that they were just in a wild space. Oh man. And there's so many more examples of amazing agroforestry systems all over the world. Each of these examples could have an entire book written about them. But the main point I'm trying to get across is that agroforestry is actually older than the annual agriculture that we commonly think of as farming. All right, so I explained the main ways agroforestry is practiced, and I showed you some farmers who are actually using it. But what do I think? I think agroforestry represents one of the best solutions we have to make our food system much more resilient. Agroforestry offers us solutions that allow us to grow food locally and in a way that actually benefits the land. Agroforestry systems increase biodiversity, they build soil, they produce healthier fruits, nuts, vegetables, meat even if you want, in a silvopasture system, and they do all of this in a way that creates a really beautiful space, because an agroforestry system is actually beautiful. Industrial farming is fragile, and it's entirely dependent on huge chemical corporations who only want to sell more chemicals. As we've talked about, they don't pay the externalities. We do. You and I pay the externalities that those companies get to profit from. But agroforestry doesn't have externalities. And if we localize systems, we can give control back to farmers, and we can revitalize our communities and make our living spaces more beautiful and give people an empowered way to grow their own food. If you take one thing from this video, let it be this. The future of food is not something we wait for corporations to hand to us. It starts now with each of us. Plant a tree if you can, or just go to your local farmer's market and talk to the farmers there. Get excited about food and hit subscribe, because I'm gonna be making a bunch more videos about stuff like this. Thank you so much to each and every one of you, and if you made it this far in the video, truly thank you. This is the first long form video I've ever made, and it was so hard. I really don't know how it's gonna do. I'm curious to see if you guys like it. So please let me know in the comments, what can I do to improve? Because I wanna make so many more videos like this, and I'm really excited about it. Videos like this take so much time to make. From the researching, to the writing, to the traveling to different countries, to film farms, I spent so much time making this video, but I wanna make so many more videos like this. It is vital that we start making changes to the food system now, and I wanna help people learn and get excited about food. So if you wanna help support me, please consider clicking that link down there, and thank you to each and every one of you. See you guys on the next one. Over here. Oh, I think it's up there maybe, I don't know. I'm new to this. I think maybe that you can click that video. I don't have any more videos though. This is my first one, so I'm not really sure how that's gonna work.